1886, the French introduced the Lebel rifle, which was quite revolutionary for its time period, but for a very short period. The rifle carried over some of the features from the black powder era, like the tubular fed magazine. It had a tube magazine underneath the barrel, much like a modern day shotgun would. And that kind of limited the Lebel in its utility and what they could do with it in future configurations like a carbine that I'm holding here in my hands. So by 1890, the Berthier carbine was introduced as a potential replacement for the 1886 Lebel rifle. The Lebel rifle was also a very early smokeless powder design, which chambered the 8x50R, sometimes known as the 8x51R, same caliber, just different nomenclature. So if you find 8x51R, it's the same caliber as 8x50R if you're trying to find ammunition from one of your Lebel rifles or a Berthier carbine. But this cartridge was also quite revolutionary at the time in 1886. What was carried over into its proposed replacement, which I have here. And this is a Berthier carbine. It's not a rifle, has a short barrel. It chambers the same 8x50R Lebel cartridge. And this was introduced as a potential candidate in this configuration. You'll find it called the cavalry carbine, if I'm not mistaken. This one is dated on the receiver as the MLE 1890, that's the year of its design, but on its barrel you'll see MAS 1891. So it has its original 1891 barrel, which most likely dates this gun to an 1891 manufacture. So the Lebel was the tube-fed magazine rifle. The Berthier used a different type of feeding system, which would become more accepted and considered to be more modern than the tube feed system. And Lee, Mauser, and Mannlicher had all come up with internal magazine design, or in this case, the Mannlicher style, which is an internal in-block clip-fed design. So this rifle really incorporated more modern features, and again in 1891. Now it didn't really replace the Lebel rifle. The Lebel rifle would carry on into military service for quite a few years, but it was adopted and issued, and as World War I came about, you would see more and more Berthier carbines and rifles being used during the war. And there were some interesting changes made to the later guns in 1916, which we'll show you an example of that here momentarily. So this is my early model 1891 cavalry carbine. You'll notice it has its cleaning rod here on the side of the stock. It has no facilities for a bayonet. There's no top wood, it's just an exposed barrel with barrel bands, with sling swivels, front and rear, and a nice short stock. You'll also notice that, like I said before, it has an internal Mannlicher style magazine system. So this is truly a clip, because the magazine or the clip spring or the magazine spring is actually integral to the receiver itself. This is something you would see with our own M1 Garand rifle, or Garand, depending on how you prefer to address it. So loading this rifle, it originally used 3-round in-block clips, and you would stick them into the top and push them down until they locked into place. Now the internal follower and spring is already applying upward pressure to the round, so you can close the bolt and it would chamber. You'll notice on the bottom of the earlier Berthier carbines that it's open on the bottom, and why that is, I'll show you here in a moment. All right, so let's go ahead and fire 3 rounds. I'm not quite sure what the zero is on this rifle. I haven't fired it much. I'm going to go ahead and hold a little bit low. I want to say it was shooting high last time we were shooting it. Okay, maybe I held a little bit low. Now you will notice this thing has a very pronounced kick. This thing, like the M95 Steyr Mannlicher, is a very brutal recoiling firearm. I'm gonna try dead holding at the IPSC target here at 100 yards. See if I can get it hit here. Thing jumped right out of my hands. I'm gonna aim a little bit lower. I think this thing, now you'll notice what happened there. After I loaded that 3rd round, the clip fell straight out the bottom of the carbine. Let me aim a little bit higher this time and see if we can get a hit here. I think we're shooting over it. I'm gonna aim a lot lower next time. So now the extractor is well worn on this gun. It's over 120 years old. It's more like almost 130 years old. So to charge it, I just stick another in-block 3-round clip into the gun, close the bolt, and let's aim really low this time. Oh, you know what? I think my sight got moved up. That would explain it. Let me try again. This might actually fix my problem there. Nope. And is recoil moving that sight? It's not. I'm going to go ahead and aim low again. I think I was way over its head with the sight being slightly moved forward. There we go. That hit center of mass and I was aiming well underneath him. So now I know my hold. Now watch what happens. That was a second round. Watch what happens here on the bottom. I'm going to pull it back. And as soon as I close the bolt, see how that clip falls free of the rifle? Now sometimes you may have to push the next clip in, which would then force that out. But typically they'll fall free on this particular design of the Berthier carbine. The 1916 changes things a little bit. All right, now I think I got my hold. Yep, got my hold. Hit him a little bit on the right side that time. And that was my third round, and it just, no matter how hard I pull the bolt back, it just won't kick it out. Let's load her up one more time. Now, if you're looking to shoot one of these rifles, so you want to make sure it's in good serviceable condition, make sure the bore's in good shape, but you can find these clips available. Most of them are going to be replicas. Some of the replicas work, many of them don't, and you're going to find that you're going to have to spend 25 bucks to figure out if you're getting a working clip. Many times you'll see new manufactured clips advertised as originals, and they're not. So you just kind of have to roll the dice when you order or buy these. You'll find them on eBay, Liberty Collectors, and other websites. And so you're just going to kind of have to buy a few and find out if they work. Don't buy a whole bunch, buy 1 or 2, make sure they're going to work in the gun. If they don't work, many times they'll just open up and drop the rounds out, which means it's not a properly made clip. Just order 1 or 2, make sure it works, then order a few more. I can't remember where I've got these. I've had them for so long I forget. All right, let's see if we can get a couple more hits on this target at 100. Has a downturned bolt handle, very handy design. Missed that one. And there, that clip fell free of the gun on the third round. Thing jumps out of my hands and it just meat tenderizes your shoulder. It is not for the faint of heart. So that is the original Berthier carbine that would have been developed in 1890. Now, as the French went into World War II, trench warfare would change things. The Lebel, with its internal tube magazine, would become a problem. With the ingress of mud from the trenches and dirt from the trenches, that tube magazine could get jammed up and cause the rifle to malfunction, and there's no real easy way to clean it very quickly. So, of course, the French troops liked the Berthier because all you have to clean is this area right here, and you could push the rounds in, force them in from the top, and you didn't have to worry about a tube magazine. Also, you can make a shorter rifle without having to worry about shortening the tube of the Lebel. So these things became very popular, but in 1916, they would change this design, and many of these rifles were updated to the 16 designation, and they would do away with this open bottom, and they would add 2 more rounds to the in-block clip. So I actually have a model 1916 here as well. So let me grab that for you and show you that carbine next to the original. The rifle I'm holding now is the next evolutionary step of the Berthier carbine. You'll notice a couple of key differences. First of all, we have top wood up here, where before we just had a bare barrel. Still has the same rear sight. I want to make sure that my sight's all the way down. Still has the same rear sight. Has a front sight out here. We're going to talk about some of the differences with the French front sights. This one has a different front sight than the 1890. This one is an MLE of 16. So this one was modified for the First World War, or made for the First World War. It doesn't have MLA 1890 on it. Many of the 1890 rifles, like this, would have been reconfigured by the arsenal into the MLE 16 configuration, which would give you the extended magazine, 5-round capability, and it would update it for use in the First World War. So we have that top wood, we have a different front sight. We're going to talk about the French front sights. They do a couple of different weird things, and this one definitely has one of the weirder front sights on it. It still has the sling swivels in the same spot. This one has a cavalry ring on it versus a standard sling up front. But the biggest difference is the addition of this extended magazine body. You'll notice there's no opening on the bottom. That's because there's a trap door used for the end block clip to pass through, which then the soldier can close behind it to keep the mud and dirt from trench warfare out of the action of the carbine. You'll also notice up front we have a stacking post, and now we have a bayonet lug, and gone is the cleaning rod. It's not on the rifle. So they made some changes to the 1916, or the MLE 16, I should say. So let's go ahead and shoot it and show you how it works. And we'll take some pictures of the front sights and show you guys how they're different. The MLE 16 uses a 5-shot clip, and it loads the same way as the 1890 before it. And again, the same thing holds true with finding clips for these things. You insert it until it locks into place, close the bolt, and the rifle is now ready to fire. Carbine, I should say. All right, let's get this little guy set up. I think this one shoots low as well. I'm sorry, high, so I'm gonna aim a little bit low. And the front sight on this thing is really, really difficult to use. And we'll show you why here in a second with some pictures. All right, bolt operates the same way. You'll notice it still has the same weak extraction and ejection. Same downturn bolt handle. Oh, these sights are horrible. I don't know if I'm going high still. I'm gonna aim a little bit lower. Woo, we got a good ejection on that one. Yeah, I just gotta aim really low, all right? Still missed. Woo, that one shot out nice too. All right, so now that end block clip is still in there because that door is closed. What I'm gonna do now is take another 5-round end block. I'm gonna stick it in and push it down and watch what happens here on the bottom. See what it did? It kicked that last one out and the door closed. Now, if it doesn't go past right there, the door can close on its own, but if it gets pushed fully open, you're gonna have to help it closed. Aim really low this time. Ooh, I don't know if it picked it did. All right. The rifling on these things may be well used or outright shot, Both these rifles have really good looking bores on them, but that doesn't mean that they're not shot out. Wow, the lower I aim, the better I do. All right, so again, when I go to reload this carbine, it'll kick that magazine, or I'm sorry, the end block clip out of the bottom of the rifle. I'm going to show you something though that's interesting. Here's one of the original 3-round Berthier clips. I'm going to stick it into the rifle, carbine, push it down until it locks, and you'll notice the 3-round clip works as well. These little guys are meat tenderizers. I'm going to go ahead and load another 3-rounder in there. Now you'll notice it has 2 3-rounders in there. It still hasn't kicked out the previous spent one. You'll definitely want to make sure you get these things in the meaty portion of your shoulder, because they got a good thwap to them. I'm going to go with either it doesn't like the ammo or these barrels are kind of shot out. I'm holding it nice and loose and you'll see that thing jump right out of my hands. So now we have 2 3-round end blocks in there. I'm going to go ahead and push a 5-rounder in. And you'll see it kick those 2 out. I can resume shooting. You'll want to keep your thumb well away from that sling swivel, because when this thing recoils, it'll bite that thumb really, really good. Make sure my rear sight isn't coming up. I'm going to aim really low again. Yeah, I have no idea where she's hitting now. This is one of those instances where the cheap repo clips are not working properly. Same hole, just luck of the draw there that it hit. All right, got one more. Looks like it's hitting a little bit to the right, maybe. Let me hold a little left. That's the secret. I can see the rounds hitting, and so I have to hold a little bit left because I'm shooting a group on the right edge of the plate I can see now. So it's not only low, it's also, or shooting high, but also shooting right. All right, so I figured out where to hold this one. Now let's take a look at those sights, and I'll show you why this one's a little bit more difficult to get a precise sight picture with. On the Model 16, I have the proper bayonet now affixed to the carbine. It's a blade style bayonet, and it's almost as long as the carbine. All right, so let's take a look at a couple of features here. First of all, let's talk about the bolt. As with many military rifles, there are safeties or decockers that would be used in the bolt action rifles and carbines. The Berthier is no different. So when I cock the gun, you'll notice why it cocks on open. You'll see that striker come back, and then you'll see a slightly knurled area in here in this dished out portion. If you get your thumb in there and pull the trigger, you can ease that striker forward. You better not have muddy or bloody hands when you do that, because you can very easily fire the rifle. To make it ready again, you have to get in there and really pull that striker all the way to the rear. All right, it takes quite a bit of force. Probably not the best design. Now let's take a look at these front sights. I just wanted you to see the Berthier 16, model 16 with its sword bayonet there. But if you take a look at the front sight, this is the 1890, and it has a traditional blade front sight. And here on the later model 16, you'll notice it has a big square front sight with a V-notch cut right in the center of it. Now, I can understand what they're possibly thinking with the big broad V-notch in the rear and this broad front sight, CQB, low light, you have a very coarse front post and a big broad rear. And then for a more precise shot in good daylight, you'll be able to see the V, and you'll be able to line the coarse post up in the rear, coarse notch in the rear here, and then you would use that V for a precisely aimed shot. I'm guessing, I don't know that that's the case, but that's the only way I can rationalize this front sight. The French would use a number of different front sights on their Berthier rifles and carbines. So you may very well find a Model 16 with a blade front sight or with the inverted V front sight. It's just interesting to note how the French were experimenting with different things as they were developing their military service rifles. Now, the Berthier carbines would wind up staying in French military service up until World War II. So that's what makes rifles like this 1890 in its original configuration so cool and interesting to me, is because it was never modified and it's been kept in its original state. And neither of these carbines bear any import marks, which tells me both of these are duffel bag guns. Soldiers brought them home from the battlefield. And that also really intrigues me about the firearms and makes me enjoy them that much more. True military history. Wow, there we go. The old girl still has the goods. Let's do some shooting with the MLE 16 with its bayonet affixed. It's quite a heavy bayonet. Let's see if that changes the point of impact. I finally figured out my hold because it was shooting high and right. Let's see if that changes. Now, if you're looking for ammunition for the 8x50, you can find it. And here you'll actually see it marked as 8x51R, so you'll find it, like I said earlier in the video, 8x50R or 8x51R, same thing. But this is PPU, Serbian ammunition, and you can find this stuff. It's not inexpensive and it's not always in stock, so shooting these things can be expensive. I'm gonna go ahead and load in a 5-round clip. There's one in there we just kicked out. And let's see if my point of impact shifts at all with that sword hanging off the end of my carbine. I'm going to aim low left. Yep, she hit. Still a little bit on the right side, but it doesn't look like the point of impact changed much at all. Oh. Dang, it hits that plate with some authority, man. It's really rocking that challenge target. Holy cow. 200 grain bullet. Oh. All right, let's go ahead and load one more 5-rounder in here. That went over his head. I'm gonna have to aim low still, lower than I was. Make sure my rear sight's not coming up at all. Oh, so I didn't have the bolt all the way closed. You saw the striker fell. That, or I didn't pick up a round. Nope, I picked up a round, so I'm gonna go ahead and close it, recock it. Make sure that bolt's down. That's a safety mechanism in mini bolt action rifles. All right, so the point of impact didn't shift at all. I still have to aim very low and left, and this little carbine does its job. What a very, very cool piece of history. I hope you guys enjoy seeing these old rifles being used here on the Military Arms channel. I have quite a few milsurps. Sometimes these videos don't do as well as other videos, more modern firearms, but I have a lot of my Patreons and a lot of people on Instagram saying, no man, we really want to see some of the old stuff. They like the mix of the old and the new. So let us know in the comments section down below if you like seeing videos like this of these old war horses, because we have quite a few in the collection and they're a lot of fun to shoot. Guys, if you'd like to support us here at the Military Arms channel, the best way to do that is to become a Patreon supporter. We are viewer supported. There is a link down below. Please follow that link and consider becoming part of our Patreon family and joining us also on our private Facebook group just for our Patreons. And please swing by and check out coppercustom.com. Guys, thanks for 11 years of support, and we'll talk to you guys soon. Stick my little 3-rounder in there. Definitely lets you know you're alive. It's got a little bit of a kick to it. Nothing could be more fun than shooting these old war horses if they could only talk.